Left-handed from three. Hole comes soaring in again. This uncanny knack. And cashes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside, circles around, pure.
Game 3 wasn't basketball. It was a heist in plain sight. The Indiana Fever were battling. They were ahead, and then came the whistles. Call after call ripped the game straight out of their hands. Suddenly, the Las Vegas Aces are parading to the free throw line. Aja Wilson is throwing elbows, and Aaliyah Boston can't even get a fair look at a review. The crowd at Gainbridge saw the injustice. Social media lit up with outrage, and the numbers in the box score don't lie. The Aces didn't earn that win, it was gifted to them. Worst of all, the controversy buried Lexie Hull's gutsy career-best performance. Can the Fever shake this off and respond? If you believe they can, drop a "Let's go Fever" in the comments.
Aja Wilson sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for Aja Wilson's illegal screen. Then Aja Wilson and Alyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. Could have took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a call when nobody touches anybody.
Game 3 was rough, but let's not act like this was the first time Indiana's had to battle both the Aces and the officials. From the opening tip of this series, the whistles have leaned toward Las Vegas like a safety net, completely skewing the competition. We saw it as early as Game 1. Vegas clawed back at the free throw line, while Indiana's physical defense was judged by a different standard. The Fever would body up, contest hard, and somehow the possession always ended with the Aces shooting free throws. That set the tone early. By Game 2, the pattern wasn't just noticeable, it was undeniable. The imbalance in the calls only grew louder and more one-sided.
Seth, why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
In Game 2, the whistles never stopped. What started as minor annoyances quickly snowballed into a constant disruption of Indiana's rhythm, enough that Stephanie White had to call it out after the game. By the time Game 3 rolled around, it wasn't just a trend anymore. It was a wall the Fever couldn't break through. The breaking point came in the third quarter. Aaliyah Boston tried to challenge a foul on Jackie Young. White motioned for the review. The bench was ready, but the officials flat out ignored it. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray drained a 3. In an instant, Gainbridge went from electric cheers to stunned silence as Indiana's lead evaporated right before their eyes.
And Aja Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aaliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aaliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you do not want to get a foul call.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner. Cut it!
It wasn't only about the swing on the scoreboard, it was the statement it sent. Indiana had fought to create breathing room, only to see it wiped away in seconds by a whistle and another Vegas basket. The crowd at Gainbridge erupted, waving their arms and shouting at officials who acted like nothing happened. Almost instantly, clips of the sequence spread online, with breakdowns showing how the denied challenge flipped the game on a single possession. Those same replays exposed a steady stream of flops, cheap shoves, and constant elbows from the Aces, yet somehow the refs barely blinked.
2-minute recap from last night. So Aja Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aaliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then Aja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get touched.
That's what makes it feel less like simple mistakes and more like outright favoritism. Aja Wilson could lower her shoulder into Aaliyah Boston. Defenders were sent crashing to the floor without a whistle, and wild swings of the arms somehow counted as defense, so long as it was a Vegas jersey doing it. Meanwhile, every ounce of contact from Indiana was treated like a felony. What followed wasn't momentum built on skill, but momentum gifted by referees wielding whistles like weapons.
It's a foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then Asia Wilson sets an illegal screen and they tied things up, and then Lexie Hall gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. Alright, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Leah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then Asia Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
For most teams, that kind of officiating storm would have shattered their spirit, but one Fever player refused to let the game be defined by whistles, and that was Lexie Hull. How often do you see someone who, by all accounts, probably wasn't even supposed to be playing nearly flip the course of an entire playoff series? That's why Hull became the true story of Game 3. She wasn't expected to be out there at all. After tweaking her back in the opener, she came into Friday listed as questionable. Her practices were limited, her warm-ups looked stiff, and fans didn't know what to expect. But instead of just soaking up a few minutes to give her teammates rest, Hull turned the night into a performance Fever fans will talk about long after this series is over.
Boston has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Hull will fire. And hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. And a jump ball between Smith and Hull.
She pushed through obvious pain and still delivered a stat line worthy of a fully healthy star. 16 points, 10 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal, while shooting 6 for 10 from the floor. 3 of those buckets came from deep, each one landing like a lifeline whenever Vegas tried to swing the momentum back. Those shots carried even more weight because they tied her with a franchise playoff record for threes over 2 games. 8 total, something nobody expected from a player fresh off an injury scare. Game 3 also gave her a new playoff career high with 16 points against the Aces. But what stood out wasn't just the numbers, it was the way she earned them, diving for loose balls, crashing into traffic for rebounds, sacrificing her body on plays most injured players would shy away from. Lexie Hull set the tone with toughness as much as scoring.
On the left side of the floor, just to clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner. Hull catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Gray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexie Hull.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal.
At times, the cameras caught her grimacing through the pain. Still, she battled on the glass against bigger Aces players, crashing in for rebounds she had no business winning. She threw herself to the floor, scrapped for loose balls, and somehow gathered enough strength to rise up and knock down shots. Every time the whistles tried to suck the air out of Indiana's momentum, Hull injected a spark right back. Even as Las Vegas piled up free throws, she kept the Fever alive by refusing to let possessions die. That's why the crowd rallied behind her so fiercely. Fever fans understood exactly what they were witnessing, a player sacrificing her body because her team needed her.
Back to Hull, wide open 3 is good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, connect. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
And that's what made the night sting even more. On the very evening, Lexie Hull delivered the best playoff performance of her career. The only thing people could talk about were the whistles that flipped the game on its head. Effort like that deserved the spotlight, but instead it was buried under controversy. In a way, Hull perfectly embodies this Fever team. Knocked down, underestimated, but never willing to quit. And while she was the picture of resilience, what does it say about Las Vegas when their biggest star could barely make an impact? Think about it. The face of the league, an MVP frontrunner, went nearly 3 quarters without a single field goal. That was A'ja Wilson in Game 3. She opened with a confident three-pointer that looked like the start of a dominant night, but then the shots stopped falling. By halftime, she was an unbelievable 1 for 11, and she closed the game just 6 for 20, 13 points on 20 attempts. By her standards, that's not just a slump, that's flat out poor for any starter in the WNBA. Instead of imposing her will inside the paint, instead of setting the tone the way she usually does, Wilson drifted to the perimeter, settled for tough fadeaways, and grew visibly frustrated as Aaliyah Boston hounded her into uncomfortable looks possession after possession.
And here we go. She gets a foul call with a 3-point game for, I don't know why they called that foul, but it's the 3rd quarter and they want them to win. So here we go. Ace is up by 3. They call another foul for A'ja Wilson that isn't a foul. All right, so then they call another foul on the Fever that isn't a foul. And then to end the game after it's out of control because the Fever had a 6-point lead, but they kept calling fouls, another foul for A'ja Wilson that's not a foul. Ball don't lie, A'ja missed 11 shots in a row during this game.
Even with A'ja Wilson struggling, Vegas still walked away with the win, and that's what eats at fans the most. The Aces didn't need Wilson to look like her usual self because everything else seemed to tilt in their favor. Whether it was the whistles or timely contributions, Jackie Young carried the load with 25 points, knocking down big shots every time Indiana threatened a comeback. Chelsea Gray chipped in 15, steadying the offense with tough finishes and timely jumpers. And Nalissa Smith, who's shown plenty of inconsistency this season, stepped up on both ends when the Aces needed it most. So while their superstar kept misfiring, the rest of the roster strung together just enough to pair with the officiating boost and swing the game back under their control. What stings even more is how the coverage played out. Wilson's box score made her struggles obvious, yet plenty of outlets downplayed it, pointing instead to her rebounds, blocks, and passing, or shifting the spotlight onto Vegas's depth. But what got overlooked? The real reason for her inefficiency: Aaliyah Boston's relentless defense. She shadowed Wilson possession after possession, cutting off space, forcing awkward looks, and leaving no room for rhythm. When a reigning MVP shoots 30% on 20 attempts, that's not just a cold night, that's lockdown defense, and Boston deserves the credit.
2 as well.
Here's Hull working behind Boston. Boston was open. Great fake, and Boston lays it in.
Wilson still found ways to leave her mark physically, but not in ways that earned much respect. There were elbows under the rim, undercuts on box outs, and arms swinging into Indiana players with little to no reaction from the officials. And yet, the Aces continued to benefit. Afterward, Becky Hammond even argued that Wilson was being hit too often, pointing to her single free throw attempt in 38 minutes. But here's the irony. This is the same Vegas squad that has practically lived at the free throw line all series long. When you've been gifted more foul shots than your opponent in every game, complaining about calls doesn't just sound off, it feels downright hollow.
Got hit a lot tonight. To shoot 1 free throw in 38 minutes, I know they told me not to say anything, but I can't.
The truth is, Indiana locked down A'ja Wilson. They did exactly what you're supposed to do against the league's top player, and still walked away with a loss because the whistles softened the damage. That's why Vegas's win feels hollow. It wasn't their star proving she's the best. It was officials and teammates keeping her afloat. That's not dominance. That's survival by protection. Now the focus shifts to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where Indiana has one last chance to rewrite this poison storyline. Sunday isn't just another playoff game, it's do or die for the Fever. Game 4 is their final shot to prove they belong against a franchise that's been handed every break along the way. Down 2-1, bruised by injuries, and battling more than just the opponent across from them, Indiana enters with everything stacked against them. One loss, and the season is over.
Sims hoists short. Look at Hull coming screaming in for the rebound. Boston trying to body Wilson, and does. Sims back to Boston, going back to work and dropping it in. An aggressive and effective Aaliyah Boston.
Becky Hammon is already laying the groundwork, complaining about Indiana's physical play and hinting that the whistles might finally swing toward the home team. The irony writes itself. After 3 straight games where calls leaned almost entirely in Vegas's favor, now the coach of the 2-time champs is acting like she's bracing for fair officiating. That shows just how comfortable the Aces have gotten with favorable conditions, and how uneasy they feel walking into Gainbridge, knowing this crowd won't sit quietly through another repeat of Game 3, and Gainbridge won't be quiet. 17,000 Fever fans are expected to pack the arena, and they'll turn every Las Vegas possession into chaos. It won't just be noise, it'll be a wave of energy. When Boston scores inside, when Hull buries a 3, when Indiana gets a stop, the building transforms into a storm. And storms are exactly what Vegas has struggled with here all season. Even Hammond herself has admitted they don't like playing in Indy. That's the Fever's greatest weapon. Turn the crowd into fuel and force the Aces to prove they can win without help from the officiating.
Here's Boston, back to Hull. Sets herself up. Mitchell is free, laying it in. Been a while since Mitchell has gotten a shot attempt. Mitchell will get one here. And hit.
Indiana's blueprint is crystal clear. Push the pace from the jump, feed Aaliyah Boston inside, and make Aja Wilson defend without living at the free throw line. Get Kelsey Mitchell going early. After her rough outing in Game 3, her scoring bursts are the difference between keeping it close and pulling away. And Lexie Hull, her last performance can't be a one-off. Even while battling injury, she became the emotional spark of the roster. If she carries that energy again, it shifts not just the scoreboard, but the team's entire belief. Vegas may be champs, but the cracks are visible. Wilson's confidence took a hit after being locked down. Jackie Young is being forced to carry too much of the weight. Their bench, steady at home, hasn't been truly tested in an arena like Gainbridge with 17,000 roaring fans. If the Fever hit those weak spots, this series flips on its head. Game 4 isn't only about staying alive, it's about sending a warning shot for the future. Cause when Caitlin Clark steps back on the floor and this young core keeps growing, Indiana's not just chasing survival, they're building a takeover.
First half, Young attacking and denied. Timpson on the block. Hull needs some help. Dump it in Boston. Find the cutter. Timpson lays it.
Indiana didn't just drop Game 3, they had it ripped away. The Fever built momentum, locked in defensively, and then watched the officiating hand Las Vegas a lifeline in the form of free points. That's not competition, that's interference. Now, Game 4 isn't just about staying alive, it's about proving how fragile the Aces really look when the whistles don't come to their rescue. If Lexie Hull guts it out again, if Kelsey Mitchell catches fire, and if Aaliyah Boston keeps going right at Aja Wilson in the paint, Gainbridge Fieldhouse could turn into pure chaos. With 17,000 fans behind them, the momentum can flip instantly. Indiana's season isn't over. It's about to roar even louder. Do you believe the Fever can bounce back? If you do, drop a "Let's Go Fever" in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Click the video on screen, and we'll see you in the next one.